William G. Roll was an American psychologist and parapsychologist on the faculty of the Psychology Department of the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, Georgia. Dr. Roll was known for his belief in poltergeist activity. He coined the term recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis to explain poltergeist cases. One of his books was titled The Poltergeist, which he wrote in 1972. For more than half a century, the late Dr. Roll studied poltergeist research and investigated many cases. His investigations and research around the world show poltergeist phenomena to be extremely complex and not just the common reports of rapping sounds and objects being thrown about by an invisible force. They can also involve disembodied voices, apparitions, and mysterious bursts of light. The following event took place in July 1962 in the small town of Clayton, North Carolina, where people started seeing strange lights coming from inside a house that stirred up the town. Flashes of light were seen inside a white frame home, which was occupied by a widow called Pearl Howell and her two children, Frances 19 and Bobby 22. The flashes came very rapidly and were similar to the flashing of neon tube lights. Parapsychologist Dr. Roll decided to investigate the incident after reading about the strange lights and even interviewed some witnesses by phone. As with many of these types of cases, people were looking for natural explanations. However, the flashing lights had unnerved Pearl Howell, and rather than believe that something paranormal was occurring, she was more concerned by the fact that there was a prowler trying to intimidate her and her family by shining a bright light into their house. To support Pearl's claims that her family were being harassed by a prowler, 2 weeks after the flashes started, Pearl started to receive threatening phone calls from an unknown person. The person was implying that he'd caused the flashing lights, so she called the police to investigate. After the police investigated, the results were even more bizarre when Police Chief Charles D. Allen told Dr. Roll that the lights appeared to follow her daughter Frances around, but only after dark and when the lights were turned off. The neighbours were also seeing flashing lights in the house. The lights appeared to follow her daughter around the house, and on one occasion they came from the bathroom as Frances walked by. The lights could not have been an external source because the windows were covered by heavy curtains that would have blocked any external lights. On other occasions, the lights even appeared outside when Frances was in her car. Neighbours would often observe Frances sitting in the car along with the flashes of light, but could see that she was not doing anything in particular that would have caused the strange phenomena. To back up the strange phenomena, a freelance photographer by the name of Charles Barden had visited the house and took photographs for the local newspaper. Barden said that he saw several of the mysterious flashes in the house the night before, stating that they seemed faster than flashbulbs and having more the speed of electronic flashes. Dr. Roll found that the flashes were significantly stronger in intensity than the house lights were. An electrician who witnessed the lights estimated it to be equivalent to 200 watts, and considering that the maximum light bulb was around 60 watts, that is fairly strong. But witnesses claimed that the luminosities would vary and could see different luminosities at different times. They said that the lights were not at all blinding. Each bright yellow, pinkish or white flash appeared to start at its most brilliant luminosity but would quickly dim, with several flashes following in succession within a second or two of each other. But there seems no doubt that the lights had originated inside the house. Electrical engineers were also consulted as to what the cause might be, and police searched the house for any remote flash devices that could be causing the phenomena. But neither the engineers nor the police could find the cause. Dr. Roll even theorised that Frances was unconsciously igniting some chemical that could produce them, as the flashes of light occurred extremely fast and spontaneously when Frances was around. An electrician later claimed to have located the problem, stating that it was caused by faulty wiring. Believing the problem had been solved, everything seemed to calm down, and for a few nights everything was quiet. But on the evening of June the 29th, the mysterious caller phoned and said, "Lights will be on tonight. Better not have police." Then at 1 a.m, photographer Charles Barden phoned Dr. Roll and told him the lights were flashing again in the house. Two policemen also witnessed it from different locations, one stationed in the house, the other on the street. The flashing continued for several nights, with police and neighbours looking out for a prowler who never showed himself. Then early one morning on July the 4th, police saw a suspicious man run away when they spotted him, but were unable to catch him, but they did suspect that he lived in a nearby house. Later that morning, an officer received a phone call from someone who just laughed at him. Despite the strange events, Dr. Roll came to the conclusion that the lights were not due to any known source, either inside or outside the house, and he was certain that Frances Howell was the focal point, just as it is with many other poltergeist activities involving young people. Further investigation by electricians found nothing, and the wiring was even disconnected from Frances' room. The landlord wanted to have the house condemned. Unfortunately, no conventional explanation could be found, even after police and electricians did a thorough check, and the flashing lights continued to be witnessed by people. However, on July the 10th, the unusual activity resumed when Pearl Howell's neighbour was awakened by two light flashes coming from Pearl's bedroom. She and her husband watched for 10 minutes as lights flashed in the Howell house. Pearl Howell called the police and even called the neighbours, concerned that the prowler was stalking the neighbourhood. Some neighbours even grabbed their guns and went looking for him. An officer who had arrived at the neighbourhood witnessed a pinkish light coming through the kitchen window as he was checking the outside of the house. As this was happening, Pearl and the two children happened to be standing outside talking as it was occurring, so the house was actually empty. Frances then moved into her mother's bedroom to escape the lights, but they continued to flash there. A few nights later, Dr. Roll wanted to see the lights of himself from the neighbour's house, while Officer Robert Davis stayed inside the Howell residence. Officer Davis reported flashes from the bathroom while Frances was in there, and observed her holding a glass of water, whilst her other hand was on the faucet on the sink. Dr. Roll could see no lights from his position at the neighbour's window, but the following night he positioned himself in a flower bed outside of Frances' bedroom window and was finally able to observe the flashing lights. As it turned out, that was the last time the mysterious flashes plagued the Howell family. Pearl Howell and her daughter both worked at a local restaurant as waitresses, and the owner had become angry when they continually came into work exhausted from lack of sleep and decided to fire them. Mrs. Howell and her family decided to move to another house. The strange flashing lights were never seen again. In the end, faulty electrics or a creepy prowler could never explain the flashes. Probably fed up with all the drama, the Howell family declined to participate in further testing at Duke University to try and determine if Frances had some type of energy in her that caused the lights. Pearl Howell had made one final comment on the matter to Dr. Roll when she said, "Electricity in your body doesn't make phone calls." There seems no doubt that the phone caller was just a creepy opportunist and had nothing to do with the flashes. The case was never solved.